What if I told you that the thing you're most afraid of losing has already been lost? What if the rejection you're running from has already happened? What if the failure you're desperately trying to avoid is not in your future, but in your past, buried so deep in your unconscious that you've built your entire life around denying it? Carl Jung understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Your greatest fear isn't something that might happen to you tomorrow. It's something that has already shaped every decision you've made, every relationship you've entered, every dream you've abandoned. It's the ghost that haunts your present, disguised as future anxiety. You think you're afraid of being alone, but you've been alone for years, surrounded by people who don't truly know you. You think you're afraid of failure, but you've already failed by never truly trying. You think you're afraid of being unloved, but you've never allowed anyone to love the real you because you've been too busy performing, pleasing, and pretending. The cruel irony is that while you're running from shadows, the very thing you fear has already consumed your life. It has dictated your choices, limited your possibilities, and kept you small. And the most devastating part, you've been complicit in making it true. Jung called this the shadow, not just the dark parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge, but the living reality of fears that have already manifested in ways you're too terrified to see. Your fear of abandonment has already made you abandon yourself. Your fear of rejection has already made you reject every opportunity that required vulnerability. Your fear of not being enough has already made you settle for a life that's far less than what you're capable of. But here's what Jung knew that will change everything. Once you stop running from what has already happened, once you turn around and face the truth that your greatest fear is not a future possibility, but a present reality, you gain the power to transform it. Because what you acknowledge you can change, what you deny controls you forever. Are you ready to look in the mirror and see not who you hope to become, but who you've already allowed fear to make you? Are you ready to discover that your liberation doesn't lie in avoiding what scares you, but in embracing what has already come to pass? Because until you do, you'll keep living in the prison of a fear that has already won. You've been running your entire life, haven't you? Running from confrontation, running from difficult conversations, running from moments that require you to show up fully as yourself. But where has all this running led you? Right into the arms of what you were trying to escape. Jung understood that the unconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what we fear might happen and what has already happened. When you live in constant fear of rejection, you unconsciously create situations where rejection becomes inevitable. When you're terrified of being seen as inadequate, you sabotage yourself just enough to ensure you never have to face the possibility of true success, because success would mean you'd have to maintain it, and deep down, you don't believe you can. Think about your relationships. How many times have you pulled away just when things were getting real? How many times have you created distance, picked fights, or found reasons to leave before the other person could reject you first? You think you're protecting yourself from future pain, but you're actually recreating past wounds over and over again. Your fear of abandonment has made you the one who abandons. Your fear of being hurt has made you the one who hurts first. Your fear of being vulnerable has made you so closed off that genuine connection becomes impossible. The very thing you're running from becomes the only reality you know. And the most insidious part, you've convinced yourself that this is protection. You've told yourself that your walls are keeping you safe, that your emotional unavailability is wisdom, that your refusal to fully engage is strength. But Jung saw through this self-deception. He knew that what we call protection is often just fear dressed up as strategy. Every time you choose the safe option, you reinforce the belief that you're not capable of handling the unsafe one. Every time you avoid a difficult conversation, you confirm your fear that you can't handle conflict. Every time you settle for less than what you want, you prove to yourself that you don't deserve more. The prison isn't made of bars or walls. It's made of patterns, habits, and unconscious decisions that keep recreating the very reality you're trying to escape. And the warden isn't some external force. It's the part of you that has decided it's safer to live in a known hell than risk an unknown heaven. But here's what Jung discovered. The key to your prison has always been in your pocket. You've just been too afraid to use it because using it means acknowledging that you put yourself here in the first place. Carl Jung spent his life studying something that most people prefer to ignore, the shadow self. But the shadow isn't just your dark impulses or repressed desires. It's the living, breathing collection of everything you've rejected about yourself, everything you've denied, everything you've been too afraid to own. And here's the devastating truth. Your shadow doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It runs your life from behind the scenes, making decisions for you, sabotaging your efforts, and ensuring that your greatest fears become your daily reality. You think you're afraid of being seen as weak, so you overcompensate by being controlling, aggressive, or emotionally unavailable. But your shadow knows the truth. You've already surrendered your power by allowing fear to dictate your behavior. The weakness you're trying to hide is not in being vulnerable. It's in being so terrified of vulnerability that you've become inhuman. You think you're afraid of being unloved, so you become a people pleaser, saying yes when you mean no, giving when you have nothing left to give, twisting yourself into shapes that barely resemble who you are. But your shadow whispers the truth. You're already unloved because the person everyone thinks they love doesn't actually exist. You've disappeared so completely into your performance that there's no authentic self left to be loved. You think you're afraid of failure, so you never fully commit to anything. You keep one foot out the door, hold back your best effort, or choose goals so small that success is guaranteed. But your shadow knows what you refuse to see. You've already failed by never allowing yourself to truly try. The biggest failure isn't falling short of your potential. It's never discovering what that potential was. Jung understood that the shadow contains not just our fears, but the energy of everything we've rejected about ourselves. When you deny your anger, it becomes rage that explodes at inappropriate moments. When you deny your sadness, it becomes depression that colors everything you see. When you deny your desires, they become compulsions that control you from the unconscious. But the shadow also contains your disowned power, your rejected strengths, your abandoned dreams. The very qualities you've been afraid to own might be the keys to your liberation. Your anger might be the boundary-setting energy you need. Your sadness might be the depth of feeling that connects you to others. Your desires might be the compass pointing toward your authentic life. The shadow doesn't disappear when you feed it or acknowledge it. It transforms. It stops being an unconscious force working against you and becomes a conscious ally working with you. But this requires something most people are unwilling to do. You have to stop running from the truth of who you are and what you've already become. Because the shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that's been trying to protect you by ensuring that your worst fears come true in manageable ways, rather than in ways that might completely destroy the illusion of control you've built your life around. You had dreams once, didn't you? Real dreams, not the safe, socially acceptable goals you tell people about now, but the wild, impossible, beautiful visions that made your heart race and your mind expand. What happened to those dreams? Where did they go? If you're honest, truly honest, you'll admit that you killed them. Not all at once, but slowly, methodically, with the precision of someone who understands exactly where to cut to make the death look natural. You killed them with practical considerations, with what other people might think, with the fear of looking foolish, with the certainty that you weren't special enough, talented enough, or worthy enough to pursue something extraordinary. But Jung knew that dreams don't die from external circumstances. They die from internal betrayal. They die when the fear of pursuing them becomes greater than the pain of abandoning them. They die when you decide that it's safer to live with regret than to risk disappointment. Your greatest fear wasn't that you might fail at your dreams. It was that you might succeed, and then you'd have to live up to that success. You'd have to maintain it, defend it, be worthy of it. And deep down, you didn't believe you could. So you chose the familiar pain of settling over the unknown challenge of rising. Think about the last time you had a genuine creative impulse, a moment when you felt called to create something, express something, or pursue something that mattered to you. What happened to that impulse? Did you follow it, or did you immediately start listing all the reasons why it wouldn't work, why it wasn't practical, why you weren't qualified? You think you're being realistic, but you're actually being cowardly. You think you're being wise, but you're actually being self-destructive. You think you're protecting yourself from future disappointment, but you're actually guaranteeing present despair. The dreams you abandon don't disappear. They become ghosts that haunt your everyday life. They show up as restlessness, as the feeling that something is missing, as the nagging sense that you're living someone else's life. They manifest as depression that has no clear cause, as anxiety about a future that feels meaningless, as the growing awareness that time is running out and you still haven't done what you came here to do. Jung called this the unlived life, the accumulation of all the experiences, expressions and adventures you've denied yourself out of fear. And the unlived life doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. It makes you bitter, resentful, small. It makes you the person who discourages others from taking risks, who points out why things won't work, who says, be realistic when someone dares to dream out loud. But here's what Jung discovered. The unlived life is still yours to claim. The dreams you think you've killed are still alive in your unconscious, waiting for you to find the courage to resurrect them. They're not too late, too impractical, or too ambitious. They're just too threatening to the small, safe version of yourself you've become comfortable being. The question isn't whether you're capable of living your dreams. The question is whether you're willing to stop being the person who's afraid to try. You're lonely, aren't you? Not just alone, lonely. Surrounded by people who don't really know you. Engaged in conversations that don't really matter. Living a life that doesn't really feel like yours. But here's the truth that Jung understood and that you're still learning. Your loneliness isn't the result of other people's inability to understand you. It's the result of your own refusal to be understood. You've spent so much time crafting the perfect image, the acceptable version of yourself, the person you think others want you to be, that you've forgotten who you actually are underneath all the performance. And now you're trapped in relationships with people who love your mask, not your face. People who need your function, not your essence. People who would leave if they ever met the real you, not because you're unlovable, but because they fell in love with someone who never existed. The fear of being truly seen has made you invisible. The fear of being rejected for who you are has made you accept being accepted for who you're not. You think this is protection, but it's actually the cruelest form of self-punishment, being loved for being someone else while your authentic self dies of neglect. Jung knew that the deepest loneliness comes not from being alone, but from being misunderstood while surrounded by people. It comes from having to pretend that surface-level connections satisfy your soul's hunger for genuine intimacy. It comes from laughing at jokes that aren't funny, agreeing with opinions you don't share, and participating in conversations that leave you feeling more isolated than silence would. But the most devastating part of this self-imposed exile is that you've become complicit in your own misunderstanding. Every time someone makes an assumption about you and you don't correct them, you reinforce their misconception. Every time you let a hurtful comment slide to keep the peace, you teach others that your feelings don't matter. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you train the world to ignore your actual preferences. You've become so skilled at being what others need that you've lost track of what you need. You've become so practiced at avoiding conflict that you've forgotten how to have authentic relationships. You've become so afraid of rejection that you've created a life where genuine acceptance is impossible because genuine self-expression is forbidden. The loneliness you feel isn't punishment for being different. It's the natural consequence of refusing to be yourself. It's what happens when you abandon yourself so completely that even you don't know who you are anymore. It's the price you pay for choosing the illusion of connection over the risk of true intimacy. And the cruelest irony, the people in your life aren't necessarily incapable of loving the real you. You've just never given them the chance to try. You've been so convinced that authenticity would drive people away that you've never tested whether it might actually draw the right people closer. Jung understood that true intimacy requires what he called mutual unconscious understanding, the ability to see and accept the hidden parts of ourselves and others. But this is only possible when you stop hiding, stop performing, and start showing up as you actually are, complete with flaws, fears, and contradiction. The loneliness you're experiencing isn't evidence that you're unlovable. It's evidence that you've been loving yourself so little that you can't recognize genuine love when it's offered. You've achieved things, haven't you? Checked boxes, met expectations, accumulated the markers of a successful life. But why does it feel so empty? Why does every accomplishment feel hollow, every achievement feel like evidence of your elaborate deception rather than proof of your worth? Jung understood something that our achievement-obsessed culture refuses to acknowledge. Success that comes from fear is indistinguishable from failure. When you achieve things to prove you're not inadequate, to show you're not a failure, to demonstrate you're not worthless, the achievement itself becomes contaminated by the very fear it was meant to dispel. You think you're succeeding, but you're actually just failing in more expensive ways. You think you're building something meaningful, but you're actually constructing an elaborate monument to your own insecurities. Every promotion, every recognition, every external validation just makes the inner emptiness more obvious by contrast. The success you've built on fear is like a house built on sand. It requires constant maintenance, constant vigilance, constant proof that it's still standing. You can't enjoy what you've accomplished because you're too busy worrying about losing it. You can't rest in your achievements because they feel fraudulent, like something you've stolen rather than something you've earned. This is what Jung called the provisional life, a life lived always in preparation for real living, always working towards some future moment when you'll finally be enough, finally have enough, finally be secure enough to start being yourself. But that moment never comes because the success you're chasing is designed to fill a void that can only be filled from within. You've been succeeding at the wrong game. You've been winning prizes you don't actually want in competitions you never chose to enter. You've been climbing ladders only to discover they're leaning against the wrong walls. And the higher you climb, the further you get from who you actually are and what you actually want. The most successful people are often the most miserable because they've succeeded at living someone else's life with extraordinary competence. They've become experts at pursuing goals that were never theirs to begin with, champions in games that don't matter to them. But here's what Jung discovered. The feeling of emptiness isn't evidence that you need more success. It's evidence that you need different success. It's evidence that you need to succeed at being yourself, rather than at being what others expect. It's evidence that external achievement without internal alignment is just sophisticated self-betrayal. The success that would actually fulfill you is the success you're most afraid to pursue, because it would require you to risk everything you've built in service of fears that have already come true. It would require you to admit that what you've accomplished so far has been less about following your path and more about avoiding your truth. True success isn't the absence of failure, it's the presence of authenticity. It's not about proving you're enough, it's about accepting that you already are. It's not about achieving something outside yourself, it's about expressing something within yourself. But this kind of success requires something you've been unwilling to do. You have to stop running from your greatest fear and start running toward your deepest truth. You think you want to be loved, but Jung knew something you've been afraid to admit. You've been rejecting love your entire life. Not because it wasn't offered, but because it wasn't offered in the exact form your wounds told you it should come in. You've been waiting for someone to love you the way you needed to be loved as a child, to fill the specific holes that were carved out by specific absences, to heal the exact wounds that were created by particular betrayals. But while you've been waiting for this perfect corrective love, you've been blind to the imperfect, available love that's been surrounding you all along. The love that asks you to be vulnerable when you want to be safe. The love that sees your flaws when you want to be perfect. The love that challenges you to grow when you want to be accepted as you are. The love that requires reciprocity when you want to just receive. You've been rejecting these loves not because they weren't real, but because they weren't easy. Jung understood that we often reject the love we need most because it threatens the identity we've built around being unloved. If you've organized your entire life around the belief that you're unlovable, then being loved becomes a crisis of identity. If you've made your wounds the center of your story, then healing becomes a threat to your narrative. You've become attached to your own suffering because at least it's familiar. You know how to be the person who's misunderstood, who's alone, who's struggling. You don't know how to be the person who's seen, who's supported, who's thriving. So when love shows up, real, messy, imperfect love, you find reasons to dismiss it, to sabotage it, to run from it. The cruelest part is that you've trained yourself to notice every way love fails to meet your expectations while being blind to every way it exceeds them. You focus on what's missing rather than what's present. You criticize the form while ignoring the essence. You demand perfection from love while offering none of your own. But Jung knew that love isn't something you receive, it's something you participate in. It's not something that happens to you, it's something you create with another person. And creation requires risk, vulnerability, and the willingness to be transformed by the process. The love you've been waiting for isn't coming because the person capable of receiving it doesn't exist yet. That person is who you become when you stop rejecting the love that's available and start engaging with it authentically. That person emerges when you realize that being loved doesn't mean being understood perfectly, it means being accepted completely, including the parts that are still healing, still growing, still becoming. Your greatest fear isn't that you'll never be loved, it's that you'll be loved exactly as you are, which would mean giving up the story that your worth depends on becoming someone else. It would mean accepting that you're already enough, already worthy, already deserving of connection. But accepting love means accepting responsibility for love. It means showing up not just to receive, but to give. It means being willing to be changed by intimacy rather than just comforted by it. It means choosing growth over safety, authenticity over acceptance, truth over peace. The love you've been rejecting isn't perfect, it's real. And real love doesn't complete you, it reveals you. It doesn't fix your wounds, it holds space for your healing. It doesn't make you whole, it allows you to be whole as you are. So here you are, standing at the edge of a truth you've spent your entire life running from. Your greatest fear has already come true. You've already been abandoned by yourself. You've already been rejected by your own choices. You've already failed at being who you really are. But Jung knew something that changes everything. What has already happened can be transformed. What has already been lost can be reclaimed. What has already died can be resurrected, not by going backward, but by going through. Not by denying what is, but by fully embracing what has been. Your fear of being alone has already made you alone, but now you can learn to be alone with yourself instead of lonely for others. Your fear of failure has already made you fail, but now you can fail forward instead of failing in place. Your fear of being unloved has already cost you love, but now you can love yourself into wholeness instead of seeking wholeness through love. The prison you've been living in was never locked from the outside. It was locked from the inside by your own refusal to face what had already happened. But keys work both ways. The same awareness that locked you in can set you free. The same truth that seemed to trap you can liberate you. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you really are by integrating all the parts of yourself you've been rejecting. It requires you to stop running from your shadow and start dancing with it. It requires you to stop hiding from your truth and start living it. It requires you to stop fearing your power and start using it. This isn't about positive thinking or manifesting a better future. It's about radical acceptance of what already is, combined with conscious choice about what comes next. It's about owning your part in creating the very reality you've been trying to escape, and then using that ownership as the foundation for creating something different. The moment you stop running from your greatest fear, it loses its power over you. The moment you acknowledge that what you were afraid might happen has already happened, you become free to choose what happens next. The moment you realize that you've been the author of your own limitations, you discover that you can also be the author of your own liberation. Your fear was never about the future, it was always about the past, projected forward into imagined tomorrows. But now you're here, in the present moment, with the power to choose. You can keep running from ghosts, or you can turn around and realize there was never anything chasing you except your own unlived life. The truth that sets you free isn't comfortable, it's liberating. It doesn't make everything easy, it makes everything possible. It doesn't guarantee you won't face what you fear. It guarantees that you no longer have to fear what you face, because your greatest fear has already come true, and you survived it. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still capable of change, of growth, of becoming who you were always meant to be before fear convinced you to become someone else. The question isn't whether you can handle your greatest fear, you already have. The question is whether you're ready to stop letting it handle you. Everything you've been running from has been chasing you into the arms of everything you've been running toward. Every fear you've been avoiding has been pushing you toward the very experiences and discoveries that can transform that fear into wisdom. Every wound you've been hiding has been calling you toward the healing that can only come through exposure to light. Jung understood that our neuroses, our fears, our wounds aren't obstacles to overcome. They're doorways to walk through. They're not problems to solve, but invitations to evolve. They're not evidence of your brokenness, but maps to your wholeness. The life that's waiting for you on the other side of your greatest fear isn't perfect. It's authentic. It's not without challenges. It's without pretense. It's not guaranteed to be easier. It's guaranteed to be yours. Really, truly yours in a way that nothing in your current life can be while you're still running from who you are. This new life doesn't require you to become someone different. It requires you to stop being someone you're not. It doesn't ask you to fix everything that's wrong with you. It invites you to embrace everything that's right with you, including the parts you've been taught to see as wrong. In this life, your sensitivity isn't a weakness to overcome, but a strength to develop. Your intensity isn't a problem to manage, but a gift to offer. Your complexity isn't a flaw to hide, but a depth to explore. Your struggles aren't evidence of failure, but proof of your humanity. But this transformation isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose, moment by moment, decision by decision, breath by breath. It's the choice to speak your truth even when your voice shakes. It's the choice to show up as you are, even when who you are makes others uncomfortable. It's the choice to love yourself even when that love isn't yet returned by the world around you. The life that's waiting requires you to become comfortable with being misunderstood, because understanding was never other people's job, it was yours. It requires you to become comfortable with being rejected by some, because acceptance from everyone was never the goal, authenticity always was. It requires you to become comfortable with uncertainty, because certainty was never possible, only trust in your ability to handle whatever comes. Jung knew that individuation is not a destination but a direction. It's not about becoming perfect, but about becoming whole. It's not about reaching some final state of enlightenment, but about embracing the ongoing process of becoming more and more yourself. Your greatest fear has already come true, and it didn't kill you, it revealed you. It showed you that you're stronger than you thought, more resilient than you imagined, more capable than you believed. It proved that you can survive your own truth, handle your own reality, and still choose to keep growing. Now the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep living as if your fears might still come true, or will you start living as if they already have, and you're free to choose what comes next? The life that's waiting doesn't need you to be fearless, it needs you to be courageous. It doesn't need you to be perfect, it needs you to be real. It doesn't need you to have all the answers, it needs you to be willing to live the question. Because your greatest fear was never your enemy, it was your teacher. And now that the lesson is complete, you're free to graduate into the life you came here to live. The life that's been waiting for you to stop running and start becoming. The life that begins the moment you realize you already are who you've been afraid to be. If this message resonates with you, if you're ready to stop running from the truth that could set you free, write in the comments, "I face my truth." Let's see how many are ready to stop being afraid of what has already happened and start being excited about what's possible next.